Good evening, Brendan.
Oh, Father. Look, here we are.
We are socially distanced, but within the same room for the first time in 12 weeks.
Yep.
Well, not for the first time in 12 weeks, but for the first time on the podcast in 12 weeks.
On the podcast.
So, and I'm glad to see that you brought your own fern with you, because you thought that people wouldn't recognise who you were without the fern.
I mean, it wouldn't be a Sunday Night Live without ferns.
So, very warm welcome to those of you who are watching us live on YouTube tonight, and those who are listening via iTunes or Google. You will not get any of this, but we're actually sitting in the same room, which will hopefully help with the delay and the vision switching and the audio problems that have plagued us over the last 12 weeks. We were just saying it's 12 weeks since we started this. What a strange 12 weeks it's been.
Yeah, no, it has. Not really.
There's really no answer to that,
it was really nice. Like, I liked it though. Like, you by the end of the week, you just get zoomed out. Like, I just was getting. Felt like it was goodness. It was another Zoom call, but it was always a lot of fun and good. We had some good guests as well. But yeah, no, it's nice to kind of we had the chance to do it in person, so gave it a shot.
Now, speaking of guests, we do have a guest on this evening. We're very glad to be welcoming Joe Melhem, who will be known to some of the young Catholics from here in Melbourne. But he's actually my youth minister here in the parish, and he's currently running youth group. And there's been a slight delay in him joining us. So there is a spot here. So he will bound in here at some point in the evening, and we're going to have a good chat with him about how his time in isolation has been. But
yeah, Joe, if you're watching,
we're waiting for you. Okay, you've got 45 minutes to get here. But again, if you are watching live this evening, make sure you contribute in the com box. Brendan's got all the tech.
I have a high-tech tablet right in front of me, so I can see all of your comments. Hi, Clara and Jerry. Clara said, missing one of those classic paintings, Brendan. Those classic paintings. Yeah. I should have gotten a second fern.
You probably actually needed two, one on each side.
I think someone made the comment that it was like between two ferns.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I've seen it on Netflix.
It's not really worth watching.
No.
Oh, well, no, it's funny.
You're better than the original, you reckon?
I reckon.
So it's been a great week. The Hawks had a win on Thursday night. And I actually went to the local pub with a few friends, a couple of
fellow Hawk supporters.
Well, no, actually, it was actually quite exciting. A few of them were Richmond supporters. Shout out to Joe Canavan if you're watching, and Matt Gauchi. I know it was a tough night for both of you, but it was actually good to catch up with some blokes. A few of them are husbands and fathers, and they got permission from their wives and their children to be out for the evening. But it was actually, again, it was one of those simple things that we haven't been able to do. But there was quite a few rules around it. 6 to a table, not allowed to move between tables. We had 2 tables.
To a pub. What does it look like?
Well, you 6 to a table. We sort of read the riot act. You weren't allowed to move between tables. You weren't allowed to stand up. You had to be eating. So it was all very sort of structured. But it was still a taste of normality, which was really great. And we were also in parishes and churches looking forward to this week, obviously opening up to 50 congregations of 50 plus. Yeah. Until yesterday when we got the announcement that we're going backwards in restrictions, which I don't know about you, but it was a bit of a punch in the guts actually.
It felt like we were going on the ride out, and then it feels like round 2. Yeah. But now I'm like, well, how many rounds? Like, how long is it going to kind of this yo-yoing of...
And we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I suppose it just brings up those old challenges as well of you can go into Bunnings and find 150, 200 people. I went to the Glen on Friday to do some shopping, and there was thousands of people. There was nothing.
Yeah, yes.
Nothing to change. But churches and families are still being restricted. So it's just... I suppose I'd begun to sort of go, well, we're reopening now. It's
not... What was that?
No idea.
That was an alarm that you set up.
That was the alarm.
What's that alarm for? Quick, get on. You're 5 minutes late to Sunday night.
Put the time on. That's Joe's alarm.
Okay, Joe, if you're not here by the time that this little timer here, I don't know if you can see this on the screen.
There we go. That's the Joe.
That's the Joe timer.
That's the Joe Melhem timer. He's got to the end of that. It's probably an hour.
Is it really? It better not be.
I don't know. So,
I
suppose we were starting to sort of come out of it and sort of see the end, I suppose, and that sort of has gone backwards. So that was a bit of a challenge, but there was cause for great rejoicing this weekend. It was the weekend of weddings.
Yeah, it was.
We both had weddings this weekend.
And there were a couple of others as well, I think. Actually, not that I can name off the top of my head, but yeah, it's the Feast of the Immaculate Heart yesterday. So I think it was the perfect day to have a wedding.
Yeah.
You celebrated a wedding?
Yeah, so Anthony and Mariana, who were on the podcast 4 or 5 episodes ago, they had their COVID-19 wedding yesterday, and it was a really beautiful, very different celebration to obviously what they've been planning. But really lovely, and lovely that they persevered through this time and still chose to get married. And beautiful weather. So your sister would have been happy as well.
Yeah, she was.
Sister's wedding.
Yeah, so it was my sister's wedding as well, just yesterday. And again, because the weather reports, all of the weather reports were saying pretty much guaranteed, it's going to rain. Thunderstorms, raining, wind. But I think Our Lady gave a little bit of a mini miracle.
How did your sister do it? Did she live stream or did she just?
No live stream. She just brought the numbers right down.
Yep.
So it was 20 people plus a couple of servers for the mass. But yeah, we're just very close family and friends. We don't have a massive family, so it was all right. But yeah, it was a bit sad.
Yeah.
But beautiful. We had Father John Paul was celebrating the ceremony. And he said right at the start of his homily, everyone says that they'd like a small, quiet wedding, but no one ever does it. And this is the first time that he's ever seen it actually get done.
Yeah, and I think this is what Anthony and Mariana spoke about a few weeks back, that there was silver linings in the choice to continue to go ahead with their wedding. So I think a lot more personal, if you know what I mean. Lots of bride and groom speak about all they do at a wedding reception is just try and speak to everybody's there to make sure that they've seen everybody at least once. Where I know that Anthony and Mariana got a chance, and your sister doing the same, to actually spend some really good quality time.
Yeah, that's right.
Hopefully build some really good memories with their family. Nice cushion.
The cushion just wasn't working.
It just wasn't working.
I'm sure it looks nice.
The challenges of doing a live stream in the same room.
It is different. I've got this fern touching my head as well. It's not quite the same as the paintings.
It's a 3D.
I think I like the look of the ferns. I don't know if I'm about the vibe of. I feel like I'm in. What's the one that goes through the bush?
The forest?
No, the Bear Grylls. I feel like Bear Grylls sitting here. What?
Fun.
If you guys can see, you wouldn't, obviously, if you're listening back to this, you wouldn't see, but there's board games just stacked in the corner there.
This is the board games corner.
And there's Throw Burrito making its appearance.
We were going to try and do an attempt at Throw Burrito, but we didn't know how well it would go.
Probably will. Yeah.
Last week we premiered, and to much sort of acclaim, Brendan's top 5.
Yeah.
And last week we looked at your top 5 favourite board games.
And I think people liked it. So I got some feedback, and they said, so we brought it back. Welcome. You know what I've seen?
We're going to need a slide. This is going to...
Yeah, we need a slide, or we need some music and stuff.
Yeah,
like a proper podcast.
Brendan's that's the next step. We're at 12 weeks now.
Yeah.
Apart from the alarms that go off every now and then.
We're getting there.
Okay,
so this is Brendan's top... Can you give me something?
No, not really.
Hit me with a Brendan's top 5.
No, I think you
good?
do your own thing.
Well, do you reckon that was good?
No.
I don't know. You guys let me know. What do you think of Brendan's top 5? Anyway, my top 5 for this week.
What is your top 5 this week?
My top 5 for this week... Hello. My top 5 for this week is... Podcasts.
Here we go.
Catholic podcasts specifically, because there's many podcasts around.
There is.
But people are here to hear what my top... that's not the only reason why you're here on Sunday Night Live, but this is one reason. You got my top 5 Catholic podcasts.
Are we going 5 to 1?
We're going 5 to 1. Yeah, well, the thing is because... Well, here's the thing about top 5, am I ranking it from... What is going on?
Yeah, we'll just give us one moment. There we go, it's gone.
I feel like it was safer over Zoom somehow.
You wanted a sound
And this fire's really hot as well. Sorry. Okay, sorry, Brendan. Brendan stopped by.
Maybe it's better that we don't do this in the same room.
5-1. 5-1. It's 5 isn't necessarily the worst. I have to come to this conclusion because I hate ranking things 5-1.
Right.
All of these 5 are good.
They're all good.
But number 1 is kind of number 1 for a reason. Number 5.
Here we go.
I'm doing this off memory, so I did write this down somewhere. Number 5 is Patrick Lencioni's At the Table.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Write that down.
Is it Lencioni?
Lencioni. So, the story of how I found this podcast, because I feel like when you find obscure podcast, or we find any podcast, there's a bit of a story around it. Story was, I was listening to another non-Catholic podcast called... It was called The Art of Charm. Like, don't judge me. It was called The Art of Charm. I used to listen to this podcast back in the day, and I just randomly decided, like, I'm going to check this one out again, because it was on my podcast list. And I just flicked up, randomly started watching this one, because I liked the title, something about leadership, rather. And this speaker, I was like, man, this guy's good, like, he's really good. And then he ended it off, and she was just saying things the whole way through that I'm like, man, this is really, like, hitting the mark. And right at the end, he said, God bless. And I said, that man's a Christian. And then I looked him up because he mentioned he had his own podcast. And then I found I looked him up on Google, and he did a talk at a Seed conference in 2015, which was a really, really good talk.
Yeah.
Patrick Lencioni, something rather. But anyway, he's a businessman, like a very, very successful businessman. Like,
yeah.
But he's maintained his Catholic faith like his whole life. He has a really good Sikh talk that's worth listening to. Anyway, he has this podcast called At the Table, which is, I mean, it's not explicitly Catholic, but it's just about being a good person in the business world, like actually just and how being a good person and doing the right things and building trust in a genuine way can actually lead to your success.
So it's the boardroom table, not the dining table?
Well, I think, yes.
Yeah.
The boardroom, but I also think he's also kind of aiming at the table, like communion as well. I think there might be that underline. Anyway, okay. That's number 5.
Patrick Lencioni, At the Table. Number 4.
Number 4 is The Crunch.
Yeah, okay.
Did you see that one coming?
Well, I've listened to it. It's sort of a younger man's version of another podcast that is sort of on my list.
Which is what?
That's okay. No, carry on.
Might give you
tell
your
us
top
about
5
The Crunch. Make sure if you are listening live and or watching live on YouTube, if you've got a really good Catholic podcast that you listen to, make sure you add them into the combox. I just had my 2 good friends, Jerry and Emily, say yes in the combox, which is true because they were the ones who actually... Is that to The Crunch?
To The Crunch, because they introduced me to it. So it's, The Crunch is 2 young guys. Well, I suppose if it's the next generation of whatever, but they just talk about stuff. Like man, like just being a Catholic, being a young Catholic. They're both youth ministers as well, I think. So they're just being honest and unfiltered as well. Like at times they're like, oh my goodness, you guys are pretty immature, but but it's just raw. Yeah. And I think that you know when people's imperfections, I don't know, whenever it shines through on podcasts, you're like, man, okay, they're speaking, they're just being themselves. So that's number 4. Number 3 is, man, my memory is really getting tested here. I should have done an acronym to remember these. Okay, number 3 was, again, it's all of these titles, as soon as I say them, I'm like, man. It's called Relationships 501. UMW's campus ministry or something. But it goes and it talks about like friendships and dating. And it takes it from I think it's heavily inspired by Love and Responsibility by Pope John Paul II.
Cool. I haven't heard this one at all.
I think I don't know, I can't even remember how I found this one. And they're actually university lectures, I think. Well, that's why it's called Relationships 501. So it's a priest, he's a chaplain, and he kind of did this series on dating and friendships, and started off with friendships and then how that actually leads on to dating. And I think that in this society, our culture's kind of doesn't quite understand friendships, and it doesn't quite understand how, and this whole theme of utilitarianism, like someone's worth is based off how useful they are to you. It in this podcast, he just blows it out of the water. It's just ridiculous. Like you have to love people for who they are, and he just kind of gave a groundwork for that, and he breaks down love and responsibility a bit as well, and how if you love someone, you have that responsibility for them. Like you have that desire to look after them, and when you're friends with someone, you don't just stop the friendship because it's not convenient anymore. And he really kind of hammers that, and he says that when he ever walks through the campus, he says hello to every single person he passes. Partly to be kind of cultural, but just because everyone's a human being, and regardless, even if they've got their headphones in, he'll just make the point of saying hello, and everyone thinks he's nuts, but when they give it a go, it's because it's challenging to be hospitable. Anyway, that's number 3.
At the table, Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah.
The Crunch. Relationship 501. Number 2.
Number 2 is Father Mike Schmitz, but not his 5 to 6 minute bits, because they're a podcast as well. You can listen to them in podcast forms. Like you would have seen a lot of young Catholics, you would have seen Father Mike's very short videos where he talks at 100 miles an hour and you have to listen on 0.5 speed to actually understand what he's saying sometimes. But his homilies are actually put in podcast form as well, and they're really, really solid. Like he does homily series.
Yeah.
And they're just really beautiful.
And I think they're really good for young people as well, because whilst he's a YouTube sensation, he's also his primary ministry is as a university chaplain. So those homilies are recorded on a Sunday night at a student's mass. So if you're looking to hear a homily that's directed directly at students, I think the only challenge is that it falls into the American cycle and campus sort of. So exams aren't exactly when we're at exams and things like that. But they're written directly to and preached to university students. So if you're a student and you're looking for a homily that really addresses sort of where you're at the moment, I think that they're, I often, it's a shame because they come up after they're any use to me here in Australia, because we get to Sunday first before they do. So, but I often listen to them afterwards and go, I really wish I had have said that.
Next year.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and they're really good, and they're just all of you can listen to their titles. They're very punchy titles that he puts onto them, like something about fear of failure, but just freedom to fail, or just things like that are really kind of on point and very hashtagable sort of stuff.
Okay, and number 1. Now, these were in no order, you said, but you said number 1.
Oh, look, can it not be... Look, if I'm judging by how much I enjoy them, how frequently I listen to them, number 1, someone's walked through the door.
Here he is. It's our youth minister.
Oh, bring it in,
Joe. We'll let him put his stuff down, and then he's going to join us. No, here he comes.
You're coming to the end of Brendan's top 5.
Brendan's top 5. Come in. We're live.
Brendan's top 5. Oh, and mate, look, you got him before.
That was the Joe timer.
Really?
Yeah, you were.
Say hello to Joe Melhem. Joe Melhem, say hello to everybody.
Hello, Melbourne.
Cheers, they're cheering for you right now.
There you go, Joe.
There you go.
There's a glass of water there. Would you like a beer?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
There's water there for you.
We're on a 4-week challenge.
I'm going to have a beer though. That was a tempt. Guys, I tried to tempt him, but he said no. So that's
perfect timing as well. 8:20. Did you intentionally time it like this?
I did not. The kids just
because this is exactly when the guest, mate. You're
okay. So really, listen up, because we're going to get your suggestion on these as well. So we asked Brendan's doing his top 5 Catholic podcasts.
I'd be curious if you even knew most.
Patrick Lencioni at the table, number 5.
I doubt it.
The Crunch, number 4. Relationship 501, number 3. Father Mike Schmidt's homilies, number 2. Yeah,
yes.
A bit of a fan there. And number 1.
That is gonna kill. Stop.
Sorry. You just broke the podcast.
The irony, because my number 1 is Sunday Night Live from...
Oh my goodness. I thought it was going to be discernment straight up. Come on.
That
would have got you a few...
That's funny. No. Sunday night, because I'm here... every Sunday night I tune in, you know?
Yeah.
Every Sunday night I'm...
Sometimes you tune in a little bit more than others. Okay. Have you got any podcasts that you listen to? It's actually... We said when we started the podcast that we actually wanted it just to be a bit of a conversation. So it's actually quite funny.
This is nice.
Hopefully the 3 of us just talking for the next 25 minutes has some value to you, but if it doesn't...
and if there's things you want us to talk about,
yeah.
just put it, we're happy to take suggestions.
Yeah, but otherwise we're just going to ramble. Podcasts.
Yeah.
Top Catholic podcasts that you recommend.
Top 5 Catholic podcasts.
Oh no, just one. We don't have time for 5.
Just one, okay.
It's Brendan's top 5, not Joe's top 5.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, top podcast.
Yeah.
What's the first one that comes to mind if you can?
The one that I consistently listen to every week, without a doubt, and I have gone back and listened to all of his homilies, even from like day dot, as soon as he started uploading his Father Mike Schmitz.
Really?
Yeah. No, hands down, like the guy is amazing. And just like, not like sort of 5-minute homilies, like 25 to 30
that's the one thing
homilies.
I can't. So we were just talking about this before. That he's preaching to university students on Sunday night at campus, but sometimes I'm like, he's going on a bit. Like the sort of 7 to 10 minute rule. He doesn't keep that.
He throws it out the window.
Yeah.
Is that a rule?
It's the sort of general rule of thumb. You sort of.
All right, you keep it to.
You're going to keep people's attention.
Keep the mass under an hour, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, I don't know about not at the University of Duluth.
It's almost like they like the homily or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna add two to your top 5. So the first is Catching Foxes. Which is a bit like the grown-up version of the Crunch.
Yeah, no, I've listened to them as well. That's what it's like.
They're sort of the mid-30s sort of.
And I feel like the Crunch is more tame.
Yeah, well, and the Crunch is like they're just out of uni or they're still in uni, and the grown-ups are slightly more jaded.
Catching foxes.
Catching Foxes.
Catching foxes.
So that's one. I think probably 3. Obviously, Matt Fradd. I don't listen to it regularly.
What's wrong with me? I'm not even a Catholic.
Are you even Australian?
I didn't even get Matt Fradd on the top 5.
G'day!
G'day, this is Matt Fradd. How you bloody going?
You bloody kicks.
And the other one I think...
Sorry, can I redo Brennan's top 5 just from scratch?
Try again next week. It's been an absolute failure.
Man.
My top 5, my top one that I listen to all the time is called Catholic Stuff You Should Know. And it's a group of priests from America, and they're on a rotation, so you never get the same 2
orange
priests.
logo?
Yeah, orange circle. Yep. Catholic Stuff You Should Know.
Classic.
Classic. And it's a really good one. I think we should give a shout out to Bishop Richard Umbers, the Auxiliary Bishop of Sydney. He's just launched a podcast.
Oh, really?
Called the Episcopal Podcast.
Good on ya.
And it's a real. Whereas we, I suppose, are the more sort of human face of the church. He's going more of the intellectual line. So it's more of a conversation about philosophy and knowledge and engaging with the intellectual tradition of the church.
And memes or not?
I think he's sort of... This is like him grown up, I think. Memes might come in, but he's only done 1 episode. I've only listened to a bit of it. It's very highbrow, but I reckon good shout out.
His memes have taken a turn. I don't know if anyone in the combox wants to.
We're building him up here.
No, we're building him up, but I reckon.
Hello, Bishop Richard.
No, look, what I'm trying to say.
He's drinking non-alcoholic punch.
What I'm trying to say is that I feel like they've gone really intellectual because most of the time now I'm kind of like, wait, what? Like I don't get it sometimes.
So I don't understand half the ones he puts out now.
But maybe I need to if we listen to his podcast,
it's called the Episcopal Podcast. It can be found on iTunes.
I'm gonna give it a listen.
It's probably worth a listen. Okay, really quick. I can't actually the timer that was going off before was the show clock. I can't actually see a clock.
It is 8:24. There was an alarm going off before. That was just terrible. Every 5 minutes it was going off.
Really?
Freaky,
top non-Catholic podcast because and this is something that Joe and I were talking about during the week actually. Ways of sort of building our knowledge and that it doesn't just have to be about the Catholic faith sometimes, but how do we sort of grow our knowledge outside of the faith, and how do we sort of just engage with sort of topics beyond sort of the area of the faith. So whether it's for fun or for knowledge or for growth, is there a podcast that you listen to regularly that's not to do with the faith?
When it's not to do with the faith, I would listen to an audiobook.
Okay.
That's what I'd go with.
Nice, bro.
But it's a different, because I don't know. I haven't found a podcast yet that's really ticked the box for me.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in like a comic book. No, not comic book. Like Marvel kind of geeky.
Okay.
I'd listen to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's got a recommendation on that. I would have greatly appreciated.
Non-Catholic.
But otherwise,
podcast?
I don't know. What about you guys?
Joe, you listen to anything?
Yeah. Well, Father, you've given me the password to your masterclass. No, I didn't say that. keep it between us. So that's what I listened to, Masterclass. I was watching Timbaland produce some of his music, which was cool. Another podcast. Masterclass isn't really a podcast, but I would listen to Jocko Willink. He's like an ex-Navy SEAL.
Wow.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff. He's great. I tend not to listen to the full thing because it's like 2.5 hours, but like
they're good though. Like I like them podcasts.
But I just don't have unless I'm driving. I don't have 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I can't. I struggle to listen to a podcast and drive.
Really?
Yeah, because
that's the best time to listen.
Yeah, no, it should be.
What do you do when you listen? Do you sit down in a chair?
When I'm driving.
No, when you listen to a podcast, you just sit by the fire and...
If I go for a walk or... Sorry, Brendan, we had to turn the fire down earlier because Brendan didn't... it was just a bit warm for him.
Yeah, right.
Fireside chat.
Man.
So the one that I do listen to, that I can manage to do in the car, it's called The West Wing Weekly.
Ooh.
And so...
You're keeping up to date with the White House.
Yeah, not the West Wing, the TV series. So the Aaron Sorkin's 1990s, early 2000s TV series, The West Wing.
And they talk about it.
Yeah, so what it is it's one of the guys who was a star on the show and one of his friends, and they go through, I think there's 12 seasons, 8 seasons. And they go through episode by episode and talk about it. And they talk about the mistakes and they talk about the characters. And then they interview characters as they go along. So if you love The West Wing, which there's a certain genre of people out there who love The West Wing, and I'm one of them, and you haven't heard of it, The West Wing Weekly is a great podcast if you're looking for something just completely to switch off to.
Man, that's the good thing about podcasts.
But you have to watch the series first.
I think to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Brendan, you've even got a fern behind you.
Yeah, man.
Nice, bro.
We did 3 minutes on the fern.
Oh, did we? Podcast. Oh my god! I couldn't notice. I was like, why is there a tree?
It's not. And we agreed that it wouldn't be. I don't know if we agreed, but I said that it wouldn't be Sunday Night Live without
the fern.
Without a fern.
So we were talking last week in the after show catch up about the fact that Bishop Mark Edwards asked us whether we had enough to talk about each week, and we said that it's actually been a bit easier of late because each Sunday has been one of the major feasts in the life of the church.
True.
So that's made it a bit easier to sort of have content to speak about. We've now hit the sort of ordinary time. So the green tree is very very symbolic, very very appropriate for now. But we've now hit ordinary time. So the big feasts are gone, and we've just, I suppose, got the scriptures of the Sunday.
Yeah.
But those of us who went to the ordinary form of the Mass today, this Sunday, we had a really great passage in the second reading from Paul's letter to the Roman, and I've got the Bible here because I don't have a screen in front of me anymore.
It was good.
You just have a Bible on hand. That should.
Here's one I prepared earlier, and it was this whole conversation about Adam and the sin of Adam that was conquered by the victory of Christ. So St. Paul says, as sin came into the world through one man, death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all men sin. Sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sins were not like the transgressions of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. And then it goes on, Jesus Christ, one man, abounded for many, the free gift of grace. A free gift, not like the effect of the one man's sin, for judgment following one trespass brought condemnation, but the free gift following many trespasses brings justification. Because of one man's trespass, death reigned. Through one man, much more, those who receive the abundance of grace, the free gift of righteousness, and reign in life through the one man in Jesus Christ. So it's this really beautiful passage. And I spoke to the parishioners here about the fact that we just sometimes overcomplicate things. And there's lots to talk about. And I go back to Bishop Umbers, God bless you, on your philosophy podcast. And it's really important. And we have an intellectual faith, and we can engage with it at a real depth. But sometimes we also overcomplicate it.
Indeed.
And the fact is that sin abounded, and there's sin in our world, and we all live with it, and we know it, and we experience it every day, but so too does God's grace. And the victory is more powerful than the sin. And there's something sort of just really, really encouraging about that. Well, there should be.
Yeah, that was great. This morning, I have the
you were in the mass.
Pleasure, exactly, of listening to Father's homily each week, and yeah, that was great. I was like, geez, so after mass, I flicked back to that passage, and I was like, yeah, I hadn't looked at that passage like that in that light before, and I heard friends talk about it, but yeah, it is very encouraging. Yeah, grace abounds more. Indeed.
Sometimes we forget that, and I think that is one of the greatest tricks of the evil one, of the devil, is to make us forget that Christ's grace abounds. And we get wrapped up in our own sinfulness, and we get wrapped up, especially in these times. And I think this was one of the things that I spoke in my homily about. If we look at the history of the world, time and time again, throughout the history of salvation, God's people have faced turmoil and strife and struggle, and it's been a test, and their faith has been tested, and this is what we're in at the moment, in our own way, where our own faith is being tested by the experience. And I spoke to them about the fact that I got really annoyed, and we were talking about this earlier, that sort of we thought that things were opening up again, and now we're going backwards, and I was like, come on, this is our test, this is our trial. But we need to be able to supernaturalize it and look beyond just the fact that that there is hardships, because God's grace is available and is present. And if we look for it, it abounds in so many ways each and every day. And we got it in the gospel as well. It was a great gospel about that God knows us better, and he loves us more than he loves the sparrows, the smallest of birds. And he would not let one sparrow fall from the sky. That's how much he loves them, and how much more important are we than the sparrows. And so we have to remember this, and that the way that St. Matthew tells us, that Jesus says that we do that, is that we need to claim Christ. And if we claim him in this world as our Lord and Saviour, then he will claim us in the life to come. So again, just that reminder that even as we walk amid passing things, I mean that great quote of Mary McKillop, we're pilgrims here. Even though as we walk amid these passing things, we keep our hearts and minds focused on the things of heaven. We need to keep a focus on that heavenly reality in this life, and let the Lord worry about all the other things that are going on.
Yeah, the church isn't closed, they're deployed. A wise man said that to me. Yeah, at the start of COVID. And it always, whenever like the restrictions affect the church, that's the quote that I keep on coming back to, that we're deployed. And it's a great time. Now is the time to, get your prayer life in order. Now is the time to read that book you always wanted to read scripture, to do all the things you wanted to do. It's now's the time.
Love it.
Now, speaking of being deployed, you were running late tonight because you just come back from...
The traffic was heavy.
The traffic was heavy from the other side of the car park. You've just come back from running the first youth group post-COVID. So you're the youth minister here in the parish, and for the last couple of months, you've been running youth groups via Zoom.
Yes.
What was it like to run your first youth group back since the start of the year, really?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, I didn't even have time to debrief with. I had a friend of mine help me out, Stephen. So I didn't even have time to debrief. But oh gosh, just the joy. As soon as the first kid that I saw walk in, Benito. Shout out to Benito. It was just so much joy, on my, or just in me and in him, and then just hanging out and talking, because I you keep in contact sort of via Zoom, so I hadn't really felt like we hadn't seen each other in a long time, but there's nothing like physical presence, but it was just great. We just had fun and played some silly stupid games, and
Brendan and I were talking about it before dinner, over dinner beforehand. We're trying to remember our first experience of youth group as a kid. Can you remember the first time you ever went to a youth group, or your experience of a youth group growing up?
It's interesting because I never went to youth group growing up.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I'm your youth minister, and I never went to a youth group.
I've never told you that before.
Yeah, well, the members of my parish council and finance committee don't really need to know. He's got lots of other gifts and talents.
Exactly. So I went to one youth group.
Yeah,
and that was run completely by a priest. And everyone was sort of sitting there, and it was, it was what it was, and we played like tug of war and did a whole bunch of things, and I remember it was good. Like, it was like, okay, this is great. Like people are here for the same reason. But I mean, it wasn't amazing. Like, it was okay for harkening back, but I never went to like a really like great, like consistent youth group. I only went to one.
What about you, Brendan?
So yeah.
I was a Protestant growing up as a kid, and then even when I became Catholic, there were no Catholic youth groups, or there were, but they were really small and they weren't kind of the right vibe. I don't know. Yeah. I think I went to just one, and it was a bit odd. But the Protestant ones, man, they were kicking. They were they were heaps of fun, and they were. It wasn't the youth group so much that I really loved, but they had camps. Like, they had weekend, like summer camps and winter programs of like 7 days long. They were the bomb. Like, they were so good. They did these, and I think I've told you before, Joe. They do these night games. It's like pitch black, and you have to it's either capture the flag but basically it was like with flashlights, and the leaders were like dressed up, and if they caught you, they'd like pick you up and take you off to, I don't know, some other place. But it was but it was scary. It was but it was so much it was just fun. Like, it was really fun. And good memories.
We were talking about the challenge, if you know what I mean, and there's no denying that the changes that have come in the way we run youth groups and youth ministry in particular are important, but that it adds an extra layer of challenge now. And some of those things that we did with a great deal of innocence years ago, I still remember a couple of the youth groups that I went to as a young guy, and some of the things that we did you'd never do in this day and age. So a bit of that sort of, I suppose, the spontaneity has gone from youth ministry.
Well, yeah, exactly. Even just the memory I just recalled then, saying those sort of things out loud, it's just, we all kind of have the instinct cringe to it. It's like, oh no, youth leaders can't even be in like physical contact with other kids. That's right. I have memories of like youth leaders spear tackling kids. That's great. But because of the reality of the situation of things that have happened, there's had to be this.
But that's also a really good sign for the church as well, that you, as this crop of youth leaders, and you're both involved in youth leadership in your own parishes, that you would cringe at the very thought of turning the lights off in a hall and abducting a child and putting them in the back of a van, even though it happened to you as a child.
Not back of the van, it was outdoors as well.
But you now know, if you know what I mean, that there has been this generational change. And we now know what kind of behaviours are safe and what aren't safe. So whilst there is, I suppose, some limitations, it is also, it's good to know that there is that sort of change now, and that there is this greater general awareness amongst everyone about what environments are safe and what aren't safe. If you had a dream, Joe, for youth ministry going forward, we're on dreaming night, if you know what I mean, we're sitting by the fire. Brendan's got
Don't fall asleep.
Brendan's got his head in the trees.
I'll just go for it. Go on.
What about going forward, coming out of COVID? If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What could we be doing better to support youth groups and young people in parishes and around Melbourne?
It's interesting because I feel like in Catholic culture, we have the Sunday Mass, and Catholics go to their Sunday Mass, and that's really their sort of church commitment. But you have like different Protestant churches, for instance, like you were saying, Brendan, where like youth group is almost like church for their kids in a sense, and so youth group is so essential, in the parents' eyes anyway, for their children, and that cultural shift of let's commit, like let's really push our kids to go and really encourage that. Because just pragmatically, you need the parents on board for them to get to the youth group. They don't have cars or anything. So, but I guess just that cultural shift of being like youth group is very important in the life of my child. I guess that's something to do with COVID, but just really just a mindset change. Yeah, I guess. No, I'm not gonna. I was gonna say a joke. It's alright.
It's just
we'll keep it
big red line in front of the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
What about for young adults? So again, like there's this thing of okay, how can we support sort of teenagers and young people? But you're both involved in the young adult scene for young Catholics in Melbourne. What are you looking forward to most coming out of COVID?
Oh, when Holy Hour can kick back off, that'll be nice.
Yeah,
that was good, and it was right before COVID hit. Was when they were getting a lot of really good people were coming. It was kind of booming after at dinners we were heading on to Cafe on Burke, and it was just packed. We were packing out Cafe on Burke.
Yeah, you couldn't get a seat.
I still think the place is too small and we need to find somewhere else. But it was just beautiful. It
is you join a long tradition of young Catholics in Melbourne who after 2 or 3 years get a little bit sick of Cafe on Burke. But as the youth scene regenerates itself, it's the cheapest, most local.
Yeah, I did some research and there's nothing.
Everybody has tried. There's been break-off groups for years. So this year, for those of you who are listening who maybe not from Melbourne, for the last 20 years, it's 20 years this year, the anniversary.
Is it really?
The young people of this diocese have gathered together in our cathedral at 6:30 for a holy hour. It used to be 2 hours. You used to get 2 hours of adoration. Over the last few years, it is just 1 hour. But for 20 years, every Thursday night throughout the year, almost without fail. Every now and then there's a little hiccup here, but it's been a really fine tradition, and it's been a really great experience for young people coming back from World Youth Day or youth festivals, or for youth groups to come in together and meet other youth groups. Many a young marriage has been fostered through prayer together at Holy Hour. You could ask almost all of the priests ordained for Melbourne in the last 20 years would tell you that presence at Holy Hour and praying before the Blessed Sacrament in the cathedral on a Thursday night has been a pivotal part of their discernment process. So it's a really wonderful thing, and I know there's lots of young people who are really really keen for the cathedral to reopen in the next few weeks, hopefully, God willing. And Holy Hour to return, because I think it is, as you were just saying, it's not the prayer before the Blessed Sacrament is one thing, and it's really powerful to pray before the Lord with others in our cathedral church, but also then to go from there and gather with other young people. And it's not particularly structured or organised. It's just let's go and share a pizza and catch up with each other. But it is a real opportunity, especially if people are feeling a bit isolated or alone. They know they're going to find someone of faith. And it's not always easy being a young Catholic in Melbourne in this day and age. So knowing that there's somewhere every week where you can go, where you're going to be supported by other young adults, I think, so lots of people are really looking forward to it. Anything else? Is there anything else you're looking forward to coming back after COVID?
I'm looking forward to being able to bring a friend to an event. Just say a friend that perhaps maybe interested in the faith or whatever that you've been talking to for a while, and you're like, come along to see it, see the church in action. So generally that for me that'll be like a tap or a holy hour, so that's what I'm looking forward to. Just have the church, the people present, that's what I'm looking forward to.
You have a very evangelical spirit, Joe.
Indeed.
What could we all be doing a bit better? What would be something you're doing better to help proclaim the gospel in the world?
Yeah, wow.
Preach, brother.
Oh, God. Look, Father, I'd have to preach to myself at that point, because I must admit, I don't know. I guess, what can everyone be doing? It's a great question. Let me think about it and pray about it. I'll get back to you. Really, honestly, just I guess just listening to the Holy Spirit whenever you speak to friends perhaps that aren't of faith. Always being aware and just really wanting to, Pope Paul VI says that you know that you're truly evangelized if you want to evangelize yourself. And so just giving that self-check. It's okay, whenever I meet a friend who doesn't know the Lord or who's not Catholic or in the Catholic faith, do I want to share that with them? Do I want to share this gold mine that I have? Because that's what we have. We have a gold mine, and I just want to share that, Or beggars who have access to bread and want to share it with other people. I love that quote, So yeah, just really giving that check of like, okay, these people don't know the Lord. Do I want to do I find myself wanting to share that? And if you don't find yourself wanting to share, perhaps asking for that grace. But yeah, also not being too crazy. Like, do you know Jesus? More, just be authentic about it.
You're preaching to yourself there, Joe.
Yes, exactly right. But yeah, I've also jumped off the bandwagon a little bit, and COVID makes it difficult. But yeah, I guess just reaching out to old friends as well is a big one. Perhaps people you went to high school with for the youngsters, or yeah, just sharing your faith with your friends.
And then on the flip side of that, quite like when you're thinking about yourself and how much you're evangelized and want to therefore evangelize, also the people that you have evangelized to and the friends that you do know that are Catholic, using that as kind of that should be conversation that should be generated between good Catholic friends. Is like, how are your friends going? Like, because we all have we all have that best mate who isn't Catholic that we know would come alive with the faith, just being able to, as Catholics, asking each other about that, like asking each other about the friends that we can all pray for. That I think that starting that conversation between Catholics will really help breathe life.
You're talking about podcasts, and podcasts are often a good way of sort of maybe engaging someone for the first time. Have you listened to this? And as you sort of said, there's some that are on the edge, if you know what I mean. There's a great one that I've been listening to as well by Dr. Mario, someone, starts with an S, from America. Dr. Mario. He's a Catholic social worker / counsellor, possibly a psychologist. And it's this podcast on sort of the areas of psychology, but it's from a Catholic perspective. So it's called Discovering Hope, Finding Hope, I think. Finding Hope. Yeah. By Dr. Mario. Google it. But it's a really good one because it sort of sits on the border of faith and sort of psychology. So again, a good way if you're looking to sort of recommend something for someone to listen to, finding something that sort of straddles sort of the divide a little bit is good. Have you seen, or do you know of any other sort of, if someone was sitting here tonight and they had a friend and they wanted something to recommend to them, any good resources or anything that you've seen or used?
Yeah.
Sometimes I've literally just given a Pints with Aquinas talk, because Matt Fradd, I think because he's engaged with a lot of Protestants as well. He kind of he knows that train of thought, like he knows sola scriptura, all of that. So that's often, I've got a couple of Protestant friends that have found that quite interesting. Yeah. That's one, but I don't know, what do you think, Joe?
Yeah. I found Father Mike Schmitz's Ascension Presents 5 to 10 minute videos really great, because he generally tends to speak into the culture as well and bring the gospel and the Catholic faith. He tends to focus a lot on hot button issues. The other day my brother sent a friend of mine who's particularly struggling, a friend of his who's struggling with mental health, just a video about mental health, and he said that it really, really helped him, and he got really emotional about it when he watched it, and I was just, so Father Mike Schmitz is a good, I think, gap bridger, also because he's young and good looking and pretty funny sometimes, so that generally tends to help. I think that's half of
full of hair.
Exactly.
That's what's wrong, Father. That's what's missing. Not at all. You don't. No,
you
but
also
it's
need
true.
to speak a little bit. Probably
faster.
three times,
6 times as fast. Yeah. No, but when I think back to my own story, and I think that's what sometimes as Catholics we can forget to do, especially, I don't know, is that Father Mike was the one that got me into the faith, kicking into the faith. And just
shout out Father Mike. We want you on this podcast.
We love you.
Someone
get him on. You don't have to come. Wait, if you want to come, you can come.
Someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows Father Mike Schmitz.
You made him a Catholic.
You make that move.
Padre Mike, it's really come
through you, helped me to maintain the Catholic faith through the hour that'll change your life. It was a Sikh conference talk. Anyway, but also and relating to other young Catholics as well, who are the only Catholic that they know that goes to Mass, are the only young person outside of their family that, apart from their family and their siblings, that actually goes to Mass. And, there are kids out there who actually, enjoy Mass, which is profound, and just
indeed
letting them...
I think also, and I think the challenge is sometimes don't be afraid to invite. Don't be afraid to extend that invitation. Again, back to a shout out to Holy Hour. If you know what I mean. I know a lot of people who over the years have brought a friend to Holy Hour. Because maybe it's not Mass, first of all, because and this could be a whole topic for a whole nother podcast.
Indeed, yes.
This whole is Mass the best first place to bring a new Catholic? And for a whole variety of reasons. Next week's topic, is Mass the best first place to bring a Catholic?
Debate.
Debate.
I don't know. What's your view?
Well, no, we'll look at it next week. But you know what I mean, where can you bring a new Catholic? And obviously, it has been challenging during the time of COVID. But coming out of COVID, what
sort of things will we bring our? But no, what you said was true. Like, just fearlessly ask a friend if they want to come along to Holy Hour.
Yes.
Just because I think a lot of us young Catholics, we've been sitting around saying things like, "Oh, I wish there was, some events that I could bring my other friends to that's gonna, there's no perfect event. There's no perfect event that's just gonna take them right from where they are and speak directly into that's gonna be right at what they need. It's just, if it's authentic, if it's there's good fellowship there, there's people to talk to. They're gonna be like, man, these are good young people, and they're actually normal, and I can have a good conversation with them. That might actually be enough to do it. So,
exactly.
And God provides everything that we need. So if we truly believe that, there are sufficient events in Melbourne that there is something for you to bring them to. And if there's not, which I think, I don't get me wrong, I think that there's room for growth in Melbourne.
Oh,
for events.
Sure.
Big time. But talk about it and actually start getting things done. I don't know, what's missing? Catan board game nights. Let's make it happen. Or whatever it is. If it's Bible studies, if it's, I don't know, whatever it is. I think that we just got to kind of step up and fill that gap in.
And I think that is the great challenge as well. Sometimes people are very quick to look around and say there's not much happening in Melbourne. But it's like, well, what are you doing about it?
Yeah, what are you doing about it? And then how are you getting involved? When the things are that are going on, Sunday Night Live from Melbourne, if there's...
Brendan's number one podcast, he goes home and listens to himself. Joe, we've asked all of our guests this. Is there something that you've learned about yourself during COVID that you're going to take out into the new normal, sort of into your post-COVID life?
Yeah. We have been waking up at 5 a.m. and exercising each day, and that has been...
Are you still doing that?
Well, it's been a rough week, but it's getting colder. But yeah,
I think particularly for me, exercise, man. 6 days a week, I need it in my life every day, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes of push-ups, even just to get the blood pumping.
It gives you energy.
Yeah, man.
It's good for the soul as well, actually.
It is good for the soul, yeah.
It's interesting. I saw an article on Facebook, I think, during the week that Cardinal Powell was a guest speaker at the Catholic Students Association virtual conference.
Yes.
Last weekend, and one of the things in his tips that he gave to students was exercise, daily exercise. That for the spirit to work, the body has to sort of be working as well. So
nothing is neutral to the soul.
So exercise, that's what you're going to do.
Exercise every day, in the morning. So it helps you kickstart your day.
Has there been something that you've struggled with during COVID?
Early on in the piece, when the restrictions really came down, not being able to see my family, that was something that was a big struggle. And also the cancellation of youth group. I remember that. Yeah, that was really difficult. I remember for 2 or 3 days, I was pretty sad. I was like, oh my gosh, where are the kids? It's
interesting. It actually, I just clicked in my head. It's revealed parts of our identity, things that we've been using to identify ourselves in. That when it's taken away, because that can be a good and bad thing. Like for a lot of us, mass, like not having mass in our lives as a frequent part of our lives, hurt. And that's a good thing. Like that's a very good thing that actually shows that there's a dependence and a reliance on the Eucharist. And if it's things like youth group, like it shows your love for them. But if it's something that crushes you, then it's become too much of a part of your identity. But 100%. I think all of us can see through this time, identify points of, is it because we're not seeing our friends a lot that we're suddenly miserable? Like, are we really depending on Christ? Like, are we really... Yeah, and do we have that love of the Mass as well?
I know a lot of people have struggled with the balance between following the law and breaking the law. And in particular, the church's stance with the government. And sometimes the church, I suppose, even going ahead of the government and being more sort of restrictive than what we've been asked to be. And even now, if you know what I mean, we were talking earlier about the fact that restrictions on us are not the same as places like Bunnings or supermarkets. And that simple question, like, if you know anything, I've asked this myself sometimes, are we as tough as Christians of old? I think one of the, I suppose, challenges for me once Mass has reopened is sometimes, I suppose, I've been a little bit surprised that there hasn't been this sort of mass flooding back to Mass.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? And I just picture those times under the Nazi occupation in Poland, and I think of Maximilian Kolbe and John Paul II, and all those great saints who really had this thirst for the Eucharist. John Paul II sort of studying by night in a clandestine seminary and working in a quarry during the day. And I'm like, do we have that same strength of faith, or is it actually easier to sort of go, oh well, the bishops have removed the obligation and therefore I won't go? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Like the saints, like the saintly. Well, the bishop said that we don't have to go. I'm just sit back. But no, you're right. Exactly. There's a sense of like, what is a saint? Who is a saint? Are we aspiring to be saints? And if you were a saint, if Saint Maximilian Kolbe was living right now where we are, and Mass has only had 20 slots available, do you think that he'd click onto his parish website and go, oh, there's no book, there's no tickets, and I'll just sit at home then? Or would he be desperately like searching around every single parish website, seeking for that ticket, calling up people? There's got like
Catholic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So
exactly.
It's the golden ticket.
It is. The Eucharist is that. So whilst we've been away from it, has it, as you said, made us hunger for it more, or have we become a little bit lukewarm? And I think that's a question that we should all be asking ourselves in this time. And I generally would encourage this to people in the confessional very early on in the piece. It's like, are you going to come out of COVID stronger in your faith or weaker?
Yeah.
Are you going to be... Is this going to inspire you and build you and make you hunger for the Eucharist more? So you're going to be a stronger Christian because of this persecution and the struggle that we're facing? Or are you going to be a bit weaker and a little bit more... sort of lukewarm.
And a good conscience, I think Father Mike Schmitz said this once, he said a good conscience will more quickly condemn a man than permiss him, like make him think that, oh no, it's okay. Like it's a sign of a good conscience if we feel a little bit guilty that we haven't been as on fire for the Eucharist, if we haven't been, this desire to go to Mass hasn't been there, then it's good. It's something we should probably take to confession, and it's something that we should address in our souls, like this is the opportunity. Like if COVID's revealed that to us. Then.
Indeed, yeah. I was when you was speaking about that before, I was speaking to a friend of mine on the phone, and he was particularly angry and frustrated with just the bishops and the church and why aren't they opening, and he was very frustrated and annoyed. And then it just came upon me. I was like, dude, you realise that your frustration and your annoyance is a good thing. Like, this is great. Like, the Lord has you exactly where He wants you. Like, this is great that you're not that you're frustrated. It sounds weird, but like, because you're thirsting for our Lord so much.
But you have to choose to turn that frustration into
action.
And a desire for the good. And I suppose that's the thing. We can just become frustrated with the government, or frustrated with the bishops, or frustrated with COVID-19 and sort of what's going on in the world. And this goes back to that passage from Romans that we looked at, if you know what I mean. There is evil in the world, and there is challenges, and there is strife, and we can just become frustrated, or we can look for the moments of grace, and we look for God's grace. We're right on the hour, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But before we go, Joe, what weapon would you take with you into the zombie apocalypse?
Now, I asked my youth group kids this. One of them said, she was like, I think like a gun, and I was like, thank you, Chelsea. Anything? A little bit more. And she was like, but I just don't know their name. Shout out to Chelsea. One of my youth group kids, Daniel, was saying a crucifix. That was my favourite.
Oh, yeah. Good on you, Daniel.
And then,
well done.
And then Vivian said Jesus, and I was like,
there we go. Correct answer.
That's cute.
You're doing well. You're succeeding as a youth minister.
Wait, so what would you say?
I would say throw that all that out the window. You'd all die. I'd go to the tank.
A tank.
A tank. You just protect it inside. Blow up a whole bunch of them. You got that little machine gun on the top. You know, you're unstoppable. Yeah. Sorry, crucifix.
Literally don't think you can beat that. Yeah.
No.
A bunker?
A weapon has to
run away. Run. A good pair of runners and just run.
What would you be?
No, it wasn't one of me sort of like
a sword?
No, like a pickaxe on one side and like a rake on the other, like and barbed wire around it. You know, one of those.
Whoa! Like, I don't know.
Wow.
It's gone down to very.
That's a weapon.
Okay, if you're wondering, if you are watching live tonight, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do the normal Zoom catch up that we would normally do this evening. Probably because it's going to take about 3/4 of an hour to put my lounge room back into the state that it normally
seriously,
sits
in. Yeah, and this fern's got to go back too.
He's got to put that back.
Take it back to wherever he would.
But thank you very much for listening live. We hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and also share the podcast links through Google and Apple Play. Thanks, Joe, for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Brendan, for making your way to this side of town.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everyone. God bless.